Welcome, everyone. My name is Kim Courvoisier, and I am the Senior Director of Content Marketing here at Lab. Today, I'll be your host as we discuss best practices for using direct mail to drive insurance industry results with our special guest from Next Insurance, Tim O'Brien. Welcome, Tim.
Hi, thank you very much, Kim, for having me.
You're so welcome. We're thrilled to have you here to share your experience and insights with our audience. And we're also joined by our incredible Senior Customer Success Manager here at Lab, Gozde Gorje. Welcome to the webinar, Gozde.
Hey, Kim. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
Absolutely. And this is one of my favorite parts of these webinars, when you all get to tell us a fun fact about yourself to kind of warm up the audience. So, Tim, I'll throw it over to you first.
So I've been doing direct mail for a while, but I actually got my start in direct marketing with infomercials, specifically the Buns of Steel and Farewell to Fat Stuff with Richard Simmons, if you remember those.
I think I may have one of those Buns of Steel videos still in my cabinet. That's awesome. And how about you, Gozde?
Yeah, being, a customer success as a professional, actually, nobody knows that I'm a certified bartender. So you might be seeing me shaking some drinks in our office. So if you ever stop by.
So fun. We should have one after this webinar, depending what time of day it is in your time zone. So a few reminders before we jump in. If you have any questions, please just drop them into the Q&A panel located in your Zoom nav bar, and we'll get to as many of these questions as we can at the end. Following the webinar, we'll send you a recording of today's session and the Modern Marketer's Guide to Direct Mail, the Insurance Industry Edition. So just sit back and enjoy the conversation. So Tim, to start us off, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about Next Insurance and who your target or ideal customers are?
So Next Insurance, we're a InsurTech. We specialize in business insurance for small businesses, and these would be specifically businesses that anywhere from 2 to 5 up to 10 employees, often the self-employed, and we carry stuff like workers' comp, general liability, professional liability.
Fantastic. And I'd like to lay the foundation now that we know a little bit about Next Insurance, about how you got started with direct mail and what prompted you to seek out an automated direct mail platform.
So I would say that we started out with direct mail in the sense that we had heard from we're a startup, and we'd heard from an investor that to get in front of small businesses, to get their attention, you need to do direct mail. I used to work at Intuit on QuickBooks, so I know that that's a big channel. So it definitely made sense. And what we wanted to figure out was how to grow this particular channel. Specifically in getting on with Lab, we were trying to find ways to use technology to help us do things more efficiently. Our job, technically, we're supposed to help small businesses thrive. That's what our mission is. And one way that we can do that is to help people get information about their insurance options more quickly and more affordably. And technology can definitely help on that front. So Lab was definitely there. We had made a big bet on marketing technology last year, getting a customer data platform where we wanted to tie all of our different types of communications to customers and prospects together. So we had a better idea of what we were sending and how people were reacting to it. And we needed a way to send out direct mail. And Lab was the solution that we found and made a perfect fit because of the fact that you guys could do an API. You could allow us to use technology and plug in and send stuff very quickly and easily. And it's been working very well.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Tim, for sharing that, the backstory behind direct mail and how it started at Next Insurance. That kind of brings me to setting up goals for new channels, right? So we all know that no program can be successful without goals. So I'm curious if you can share, what your year one goals were for your direct mail program.
So, like I was saying, direct mail was a new channel for Next. We started acquisition primarily with search and digital ads. So the first goal that I had was to demonstrate that this was a profitable channel and that we could make it work. And the funny thing about it when it started was, we're an online insurance company as well. And there were colleagues when I first started here who were like, why are we sending direct mail? They're like, we're online. Why are we using this old school channel? And, we made the case that people are responding to direct mail. They see this. It is a way to help build the brand as well as get response. So the first goal was to definitely show that it could be profitable. The second goal in the first year was, could we scale? If it is profitable, could we scale this channel? Direct mail is fairly complex when you think about it. There's creative, there's data, there's the production of this mail, and trying to make sure you can get all of those things working together according to a schedule can be fairly complex. So that was the second big goal of our first year doing direct mail at Next, and working with you guys. You guys were definitely there to help us set that foundation and show that we could scale it fairly easily.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tim. It sounds like the foremost everything, before you get started is to justify the value of direct mail. So that kind of brings me to, what you mentioned about scaling. As your program evolved, how did you come up with your second year goal with Lab and direct mail in general?
So like I said at the beginning, I've been doing direct mail for a while. So I'm somewhat familiar with the different types of formats or types of campaigns you could do in this particular channel. So the stuff that we wanted to do with you guys in the second year with Lab was, now that we've demonstrated we could scale this channel, now that we demonstrated it can be profitable, how do we push the envelope and do things with you guys that we know other companies, other printers have that ability? So like pushing onto form factors. So instead of like just a simple letter, can we do self mailers and various different size envelopes, self mailers, postcards, that kind of stuff to make it interesting and stand out in the inbox. So that was kind of part of the second year goal.
Awesome. So now I'd like to pivot a little bit and talk about testing, right? Because part of being a marketer is always learning and optimizing based on data. So Tim, based on the goals that you just discussed around, proving the value and scalability and those types of things, what tests or experiments did you run to get more data to influence the types of campaigns and the use cases that you would use direct mail for? And the images you see up on the slides are really just a mock-up, right, of the exact same imagery, the exact same copy, but with like two different offers. And these don't come from Next, they're merely a mock-up. So I'm curious, did you run tests like this around offers or CTAs or copy, imagery, formats, those types of things?
Yeah, we definitely were doing tests on offers last year. We've done different call to action tests, but a lot of the stuff that we've been trying to do over the last year has been around data, specifically timely data. So when we first started doing direct mail in our first year, we were targeting businesses that were like our current customers. So we are very strong with contractors and cleaners and self-employed. So I was targeting campaigns upon those individuals. But with direct mail, when you're sending it, you don't know if those businesses actually need insurance at that moment. So one of the things that we ended up trying to figure out was, what is going on at a business's life stage where there may be a change to what they're doing, or they're coming upon an anniversary. That kind of stuff we were thinking may be a good time to hit somebody with an insurance offer because something's changed. They may have more employees. They may be moving to a larger space. Those kind of things. We work very closely with the data team here, and they're very scrappy at trying to find information with with a couple different providers that could get this kind of event-based data. And what we were able to see with that is when I mailed somebody around a specific time that may be important to them, our response rates were 4 times better than what we had when we were just mailing at a given calendar date. So there's something about using timely data and being able to get that message to somebody faster. So we found that that works. In regards to the points you have here about different types of offers for different people, there are different industries that we support. So we will create different versions of the letters that we send out specific to industries. We've started that testing fairly recently, so I'm waiting on results on that. But based on prior experience, that has helped improve response rates anywhere from 10 to 15%. So every little bit counts, especially on the acquisition side.
I love this all as a marketer who loves to geek out on data, like all of these little proof points and, seeing testing by industry and all of that is just, it's so meaningful. So I'm curious, which of these tests that you've conducted, over the past, let's say 12-month span has influenced your strategy the most?
I would say it would be the event-based, like finding data that is specific to a particular industry, anniversaries, or somebody just got a license approved for their business. Those type of campaigns have done very well for us. So my quest in moving into 2023 is to find additional data sources like that for different industries, like food and bev or other types of industries that we're pursuing. If I can find data specific to when somebody is doing something, that's going to be much more impactful than me just mailing them willy-nilly.
And I think those types, I was gonna say those types of campaigns are also like such an important way to stand out and be memorable and improve the customer experience, right? Like, because you were like striking while the iron's hot, while they're having these really meaningful moments and kind of their milestones of their business, right? Getting a new business license, whatever those moments are, the anniversary of, signing up, things like that, which are so much more memorable than just like, I would say maybe even like Black Friday or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like everybody's tagging on to that moment. You're making up your own moments that are personally relatable to that customer.
I would agree. I would also, I want to throw something else in there that I think is important on the acquisition side that we've been doing is, and it's, one of our plans for 2023 is a more aggressive moving into modeling. We did use, like I said, we'd been targeting lookalike customers in our efforts. And one of the things we wanted to do and was, can we get a propensity to buy model or a propensity to quote model built? And we did that early last year. And we've started rolling it out in the middle of this year. And that actually has shown to be very positive on the ROI front for us. So to me, like if you can use your data that you have and then model off of that, not just the timely, but trying to figure out who's the right ones to go after, that's pretty key to staying efficient.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tim. So it sounds like, as you test and experiment more, automation will be really important and key here. So maybe we can jump on to a little bit of like talking about automation. So if you maybe can share a little bit more on how automation has helped you with testing in theory. My thoughts are definitely it should be much more efficient than trying to test with a traditional direct mail print partner. So would you agree with that?
Yeah. For folks who are familiar with kind of like the traditional direct mail model of getting a campaign out the door, there's a fair amount of time. It can run up to like a month or more, especially nowadays when you're thinking about the difficulty to get envelopes or paper shortages during the supply chain issues earlier in the year. You've got to reserve press time. You got to get the paper and the envelopes, and all of that stuff takes time. And automation, like working with you guys, and the fact that you have this stuff already set up across your network, and I don't have to worry about that stuff. I can go into the customer data platform that we have, Bloomreach, and I can create a campaign, tag and tie in the data that I'm going after, create various conditions on like how I can suppress and fine tune that population, and then create a test pretty easily with like an A/B setup. And I can launch something in a couple of days, whereas in the past it could take a month. And I don't need to coordinate with anybody. So if I'm bored on the weekend and I have an idea, I could launch a campaign as long as I have the template set up in Lob.
I love hearing you talk about this. You could tell how much you love what you do, and that's contagious. You make direct mail seem fun, and it's fun for us because we do it every day, but hearing you talk about it's like magical. So, and hearing, something that used to take a month takes, days or hours is incredible. And that's a total game changer, right? It's like at the speed of like what email marketing is these days, right? Where you could just like send out a campaign in hours like that. That's pretty extraordinary.
Well, if you think about it, Kim, from the aspect of like the timely data, so like hotline lists, that's some of my campaigns are hotline lists, like new businesses. If I get that list and I have to, wait a month or so, and then the additional time in the mail to get to somebody, that data is getting pretty stale and it's losing its magic, so to speak. So if I can get something out in a couple days, and the fact that your network is spread out all over the country, that mail is going to get in home a lot faster than it would if it was coming from a single print location. So it just helps make sure that data stays as fresh and active as possible.
Absolutely. I'm going to coin your term you used earlier because I loved your pun. It allows you to really push the envelope. So now, speaking of pushing the envelope, I'd love to talk a bit about form factors. Much of the direct mail that you send for insurance can consist of operational messaging and letter format for notification of like lapses, renewals, policy changes. But you can also experiment, right, with different formats for marketing applications, such as a new customer acquisition campaign, or even a retention-focused mailing. You can supplement those operational mailings by inserting a buck slip with more marketing-focused messaging and get more bang for your mailing bucks and push that envelope. In our State of Direct Mail Consumer Insights, we found that those aged 18 to 34 were significantly more likely to read letters and envelopes than those 35 plus. And this is potentially due to the fact that information typically found in this format may match their life stage, like you were talking about, right? Those life stages or those event stages. So, life stages like credit card approvals or educational information, while those 35 to 54 were more likely to be interested in postcards than their older or younger counterparts. And we often say this is because those in that 35 to 54 stage are very, very crunched for time. So they want something quick and easy to scan. So you can further experiment by segmenting your audience into cohorts, right? By age, gender, geo, and more, and then testing those formats, messaging, and offers like we've been talking about. So our State of Direct Mail Consumer Insights report also showed that letters and envelopes were the direct mail format most likely to be read for the financial services insurance industry. So with all that said, Tim, how does all this data bode with the performance of formats that you've tried for next?
The bulk of what I'm sending is letters and envelopes. And that kind of makes sense. I especially like the double window, blind envelope that you guys have for the letter population. I have seen that often works better than a more promotional envelope, especially for financial services. If you think about it, you don't know if it's an invoice or a bill or something like that coming, so you're more likely to open that stuff. So there's that element of mystery. That's good. But I have started using some self-mailers and postcards in our programs, for sure.
Awesome. Just to add to the letter envelope combination that you mentioned, Tim. So we recently had a chance to work with you on Lab's pilot for box slips, the small insert you can place inside an envelope with a mailer. Maybe can you tell us a little bit more about the use case for that and how it's performed?
Yeah, so insurance that's a considered purchase. You have different options. It's fairly complex for most people. A lot of businesses don't have time to think about it, but they know they should have it. So because it's a considered purchase, to me, like having more real estate is a must. Next, like I said, we're a startup still. We're also new with direct mail over the last year or so. So I'm trying two different things. I'm trying to convince somebody they need insurance, but I also need to convince them of Next. So to me, having that extra real estate on that buck slip is pretty helpful. And I think the other thing is, if somebody does read my letter, there's the potential that that buck slip is something that they may stick onto a fridge or stick onto a desk or on the dashboard of their truck because they know, I should go back and get a quote from Next. So to me, that's a reason for having that. And when I've tested at prior jobs, the inclusion of buck slips, versus no buck slips, there was a lift on that kind of stuff that paid for it. So to me, it is a good tactic to use in some direct mail campaigns. So we just started mailing that, Your Right Goes Day, a couple of months ago, but we do not have results yet. So I am looking forward to seeing them and coming back with good news.
And I love this flow chart you've done here and that we're showing with our audience right now that really shows, all the different steps that you're using with buck slips and the A/B test and how you've really mapped this out and super strategic. So all of this thought and planning is, kind of the foundation on which campaigns are built. So it's great to see, you putting that effort in there. We
But
talked
this,
a bit about.
go ahead. I'm sorry, Kim, but I was going to say, like this scenario is something that I put together, in about an hour or so. But this just demonstrates in our customer data platform, I could create this campaign, I could create this test, and I can launch it when I'm ready or when we have the inventory on hand, with the buck slips with you guys. But it isn't something that I'm having to pull in a data partner to, like, here's a mail matrix, put this many in this test cell and this many in this test cell, and then send the file out to the printers. I'm creating all of this in our platform, Bloomreach, and I'm able to launch this thing, when I'm ready.
It's so great as a marketer to be able to be like independent, right? And even though we collaborate a ton with all the different parts of the organization, what you just said, not having to be dependent on, that data person and, all these other people, you can actually do this. You said in an hour. So impressive. Like, I need to learn from you. This is amazing. And then be able to launch it right then and there, like you said, if you're bored on the weekend or something. So being able to be empowered like that is fantastic. So, we've heard a little bit about buck slips. I'm curious if you can share with our audience the different formats you use across your customer lifecycle. And we have a few examples of some of these awesome campaigns here.
All righty. So like I said, I mentioned hotlines for going after new businesses. So, what I've got currently in the rotation is a pretty bold and colorful self-mailer, the orange thing right there, which we're sending to new businesses. And we're being fairly fun and congratulatory to get their attention and make them feel good. Like I said at the beginning, we're all about helping small businesses thrive. So, we want to make sure they recognize who we are and that we're there for them. As they progress further on, or as I reach out and I'm prospecting to more mature businesses, I'm going to be more likely to use something that's a little bit more, traditional, the plain white envelope to get somebody's attention, like I was saying earlier. And that item there on the far left-hand side is an example of a letter that we're sending to businesses, specifically in the food industry to get their attention. there's a couple examples there as well of postcards. So earlier in the year, I was using postcards as a follow-up to our initial direct mail stuff. So, in many cases, touching somebody a couple times is going to be a little bit more effective than just hitting them once. So postcards, which are a little less expensive than a letter, is an option that we've been using. I would say,
I would love some of the copy here, like cooking with the right insurance and hold the deodorant. And it has a ton of personality there, which I'm sure helps connect with your customers.
Yeah. I think the other thing I'm going to add in there too is, like I said, I'm prospecting. If myself or one of my digital colleagues on the acquisition side effectively get somebody to get a quote, the lifecycle team here at Next gets in on the action. If somebody gets a quote but doesn't purchase right away, or they don't provide enough information in that quote, we'll follow up with them with a letter. So we're using direct mail at different stages with the business and with the relationship that we're trying to develop with them as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tim. So that kind of brings me to talk about like omni-channel strategy. You mentioned that you're using direct mail in different touch points, but speaking of the customer lifecycle, I know our audience would love to hear about how you use direct mail alongside other touch points in the customer journey, including email maybe, or other digital channels to deliver an omni-channel experience. So maybe could you speak to that a little bit more?
The one thing I'd say is, so the CDP platform that I was showing before, we have the ability to tie email behavior to direct mail behavior, as well as on-site digital behavior. So we can see who's taking particular actions, and we're planning on sending letters in the near future to people who've actually started engaging pretty heavily with email. So, we know different companies, are, thinking about budgets going into 2023. I'm trying to be as efficient as possible. So if there's ways for me to reduce some of my spend by being very strategic about who I go after, and if I can see that somebody is taking action digitally and sniffing around, it may make more sense for me to send something to them as opposed to just hitting a larger list. So that's some of the stuff that we're doing currently across channel.
It's fantastic. As we all know, no one channel is a silver bullet for getting results. It's about strategically using your channels to deliver an engaging, connected, and memorable customer experience. So let's pivot again here to talk about the thing as marketers we all love, tracking and attribution. And I'll hand this over to Gozde.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim.
Sure.
So yeah, I think we've talked about testing different form factors and performance overall. And Tim, you're doing some very sophisticated things with your direct mail program, which is exciting. So if you could tell us a little bit more about your best practices for tracking and attribution, which can sometimes be hard to do.
Okay. Yes, that is for sure. When I started here, I think one of the things that I was used to in prior jobs was the use of codes. Like, you mail somebody, they're on a list, and they call into the call center, and you can attribute it very perfectly back. It wasn't the case when we started this channel out, because with direct mail, somebody can read it. They don't have to respond right away. They don't have to respond via the URL or the phone number that you use. So one of the first things that we did was create a matchback process so that we would be able to determine the effectiveness of the campaign. So, our data team worked very closely with our MarTech team to figure out a way of all of the mail going out. How do we tie that back to who actually purchased, so we can actually have a very good idea of who is actually responding to this stuff? The other thing I would say is the matchback process took a while to get going, but it is working. One of the other things that we created was vanity URLs in order to determine whether or not there's traffic coming to these programs. So for each campaign, in some cases, each creative, I will have a different vanity URL so that I can go into Google Analytics and see, are people responding to my programs? And that can be helpful to make sure that call centers and other folks are familiar with the potential volume that may be coming down the pike for you. I would also say, you got a QR code here. We've started using QR codes. A lot of people are using them. I've seen some engagement with it, not as much as I thought, but I think it's a good thing to have so that people recognize it's easy to respond if you have your phone handy. The other thing I would say with QR codes that we're working on for 2023 is making them personalized. If we can figure out ways to put some information about that individual into that QR code, I can reduce the number of steps they take when they try to get a quote. So instead of dropping them on a landing page or a home page, I could potentially put them right into our application process, which will save some time for them and has a higher chance of completing those quotes that I'm trying to drive.
Yeah, this is fantastic. And I love that you brought up the QR code there at the end. And I know these are all just mock-ups. They're not actual real URLs. So if anyone tries to use them, they will not work. But with QR code, the pandemic was really the resurgence of QR codes. They have sort of fallen by the wayside. And during the pandemic, it was the only way to order off a menu, right? Was to scan that little QR code and do it. So it really brought them back. And I knew QR codes were back when I was driving down Lombard Street in San Francisco the other day. I looked up and there was a huge billboard from Salesforce and it had a big QR code on it. And I was like, okay, they're putting QR codes on billboards. Like, how are you supposed to scan that if you're driving by? But I don't know. We'll see how that works for them. So I'd like to chat about one last topic that's very relevant for the insurance industry, which is security and compliance. And, companies will typically have an ad hoc process to ensure direct mail production compliance. But when you automate direct mail, you can move to a completely digital model, kind of eliminating, right, that back and forth communication between stakeholders, like you mentioned, Tim, manual data entry, and maintaining data handling compliance. So automation gives you that opportunity to elevate the direct mail data security and compliance to the level of your digital channels. With automatic address verification, identity validation, and a completely digital workflow, you can move direct mail to the databases you already use for email and other forms of communication. That allows you to leverage the controls you already have to protect consumer information and control access. So while direct mail automation doesn't eliminate the need for messaging compliance reviews, it most certainly makes that job easier. And your compliance team can check the template directly to ensure all your mail pieces have the right messages. You can also use merge variables to plug in, automatically those disclaimers into specific mailings, such as invoices or applications. And that eliminates the risk of, leaving out mandated messages and makes it much easier to develop new campaigns kind of on the fly. And finally, there's that digital record of every mail piece sent, so your team can prove that the mail piece has mandated disclaimers. So that's a lot of information, a lot of talk about compliance. But Tim, how has automating, your direct mail process helped you with security and compliance, if at all?
It has. I'd say one area is with the data files, the mail files that are going back and forth. Before we were with Lob, there were times where I would have a mail file and we would send it through email, or we would have to work with the printer to figure out how to get an SFTP set up in order to pass the data on that kind of stuff. Here with the connection that we have with you guys, it's instantaneous through that scenario or the different scenarios that I've got. So that is saving a lot of time. It also makes it easy in terms of going back to the whole attribution issue. I want to bring that back, is when the mail is being put through CAS and COA certification by you guys, I want to make sure I understand who was mailed and who was not mailed. So that information is coming back automatically as well. So I'm not having to get another file from a printer to keep track of that stuff. So there's less chance of somehow a file getting lost or somebody's data getting exposed. And then I think you raised a really good point. If the legal team were to come back and say, hey, we have a complaint from somebody, they received this or they're claiming this, did they get a piece of mail? Through the platform, I can go in myself and find out, what did they in fact receive, and I can generate that and then pass it back to the legal team to say, well, this is what they got. I don't know what they're saying. So it definitely helps speed that process up and definitely avoid, many different teams getting involved, at the drop of a hat to solve something that could take minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it all goes back to that accountability, right? And just for further context here, Lab undergoes all the annual audits to provide a complete solution you can count on. And we have enterprise grade product, application, infrastructure, corporate, and physical security. So we believe in complete transparency in all of our security practices. So if anyone out there has, questions, we'd be happy to answer those about how we keep your data safe. And we can do that via email, so you don't have to, put it in the QA chat as well. So let's move on and look forward into our little glass here, our looking glass. You've been laying the groundwork for a direct mail program that integrates in your marketing tech stack and your omnichannel marketing programs. That's clearly working. And you're learning new things every day. So what does that mean for 2023 and how you're going to approach the new year next, Tim?
Well, I have plans to continue testing new data sources. So again, if I can find more timely data for particular industries, we're going to be testing that. We have a marketing qualified lead program that we've just started for one of the industries that we support, where we're offering content up free through Facebook as long as somebody gives their email address, and then I'm communicating with them via email. The plan is we're going to nurture those relationships along and then start sending direct mail to those people if we can get them to provide their physical address, or if we can figure out a way to append that address. So trying to use different ways and bits of bait to get people to give us more information is kind of on tap for 2023 right now. But there's definitely stuff that'll come along from you guys in terms of form factors that we'll definitely want to test as well.
Fantastic. I feel like I should take off my reading glasses and put on my sunglasses, because the future looks very bright indeed for Next Insurance and direct mail next year. So we've covered a ton of territory already today, and it's been amazing to hear how you and Next Insurance are driving results using direct mail as part of your strategy. In a noisy digital world, direct mail breaks through and gets results like no other channel. That's why my very favorite stat in the world, 67% of marketers say that direct mail delivers the best ROI of any channel they use. And Lab's automated solution for insurance companies enables you to capture your customers' attention and engage them with personalized experiences. The platform provides limitless customization options for copy, images, promotions, form factors, offers, that drive trust, create those personalized relationships, and improve customer satisfaction. So I know that the Q&A has some questions already lined up for us. So if you're ready, we'll jump right in. Let's see, I'm gonna scroll through here. All right. So Tim, you mentioned this just as we were talking about 2023. If you were to test a new form factor or use case, what would you choose and why?
Card-a-fix. You guys have the ability to do card-a-fix. We've started testing that with you guys. I definitely want to see if that works. I know it can work. My background is with DM with financial services. And there's something about getting an envelope and you feel something inside, like, ooh, I got to open this thing up and see what it is. So that's one area where I think ways to stand out in the mailbox that is different, has a different feel, different texture, all that kind of stuff makes a difference. And it's stuff that I, want to keep testing for sure.
It totally reminds me of a lifetime ago applying to colleges, right? And you get the thin envelope or the thick envelope, and you're like, come on, thick envelope, because it meant something good. So I think that still correlates to this. Awesome. All right. This next question, I think we're going to throw this one to you, Gozday. If I want to test out direct mail for an upcoming campaign, what should I do to ensure the greatest return?
Love this question. So I think if we break it down to 4 pillars, right? When you're setting up any type of campaign, on top of like setting the objective and creating the budget, I think what I would really hone into is the omnichannel approach, right? I think, Tim, you also mentioned that. We've seen from other customers as well, leveraging a few different channels increases engagement by almost 13%, 13 times higher when it comes to response rate. So I think one of the examples that Tim also provided, right? Honing into an email notification after a mailer got delivered to the end destination, right? Kind of increasing that brand awareness and reminding the person who received that direct mail will definitely be really helpful for the response rate. I think that would be definitely something that I would highly recommend.
Awesome. Great tips. I have one more for you, I think, Tim, here. Let's see. I think we have time for 2 more. So how long did it take you to get up and running with your direct mail programs at Lob? This might be a joint question.
Yeah. I would say it probably took a couple months. Of course, there was a contract and all that kind of stuff, which takes so much time. But I think the other aspect was setting up the relationship between our marketing technology team and the Lob team. That took about a little over a month, and I think it could have taken longer. I'll be honest with you. I've worked with another provider, and setting up an API took longer than we thought. You guys had the documentation in place, and it was easy for the MarTech team to actually go in there and follow the steps and set things up in connection with Bloomreach. So it could take a couple months, but it's worth it, because like I said earlier, it could take a month to a month and a half to get a campaign out the door.
But then you said that's what the other providers, but once you came over to Lob, it took you a couple
Correct.
of days, right? So
Correct.
That initial little setup time of a month or so, and then boom, you're off to the races, which is fantastic. So I have one more. I think we have time for one more. Does Lob have any compliance and security certification? So Gozday, I'll give that one to you.
Love this one as well. Sure. Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. And I think, Kim, you covered pretty much all of it. But we definitely work with a lot of customers in fields where it's like highly regulated, right? And we definitely go over an annual audit for HIPAA compliance, as well as our SOC 2 type 2. And, if you're curious to learn more about that and see our reports, you can definitely go to lob.com/security, and you will see all of our reports that we have at hand at Lob. And as well as you can definitely reach out to our, security team as well to learn more about it.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And thanks everyone for the excellent questions. If there are any that were unanswered live here today, we'll follow up via email to make sure you get your answers. Before we wrap up, we'd love to launch a quick poll to see if you'd like to learn more about Lob's direct mail automation platform that transforms direct mail into intelligent mail at scale. Give that a second. And I'd like to thank you all for coming, and thank you, Tim and Gozday, for your incredible insights. Reminder to everyone to keep your eyes peeled for your copy of the recording and the guide. And until next time, happy mailing.
Thanks
everybody. You're so welcome.